Hey everyone, it's Frankie-Lou. Got a busy day here ahead of me, a bunch of planting and building projects, but I thought I'd take this time to have a quick chat with you because lots of you are new to gardening, which is awesome. I'm so glad that this, one of the side effects of what's going on right now is so many people are interested in gardening. It's awesome. And I thought this would be a chance. A lot of you guys have questions about what is heirloom versus hybrid versus organic versus GMO versus non-GMO. So, at the request of several of you, I thought I'd take a quick minute to explain some of those things because it's not always very clear. So, I'm going to try to make it a little clearer today. So, first of all, I'm going to talk about my favorite thing, which is heirloom seeds. What does heirloom mean? Well, just as when we talk about heirlooms being something families have that they pass on from generation to generation, the word heirloom, when it comes to seeds, sort of denotes a lot of the same sort of ideas and values. Heirloom means that it's been around for a while. Before I go into some more details about that, I want to talk about why heirloom seeds are important now and what happened and where this shift has come. And there's some might involved here that might make it a little clearer. Post World War II, the world saw a huge shift towards industrialization in a lot of areas, and one of those areas that most affects us is agriculture. Prior to World War II, there was a lot more genetic diversity in seed catalogs and stuff back in the 19th century than there is now. And the reason for that is there was a major shift towards monoculture agriculture, which is basically the idea that you're going to grow one big crop in huge, vast quantities on huge farms and ship it worldwide or to a much larger market. Prior to this time, we saw a lot of more market garden sort of idea where people would be very proud of family heirlooms that they grew in their garden and that they sold at local markets. But if you have had the benefit of growing some heirloom tomatoes, you know that they don't tend to be uniform. They do tend to be softer. That's one thing I've definitely noticed. And they're all different sizes and shapes and colors. This didn't work if you're shipping large, vast quantities in truck trailers across the oceans or in very, very large, long distances. You need something that's going to be the same size so that you can pop it into set containers. People wanted uniformity, and it just sort of led to this development of hybrids that would produce mass quantities quickly, uniform size and shape, and also an ability to ripen up from a green state with the gassing process, particularly with stuff like tomatoes. I'm speaking mostly about tomatoes here because there are lots of different plants that have heirloom versus hybrid, but for the purposes of this discussion, so that it's not 3 hours long, I'm going to talk most specifically about tomatoes because that's where a lot of the questions are arising. That is why when you go to the grocery store now, the majority of the tomatoes that you see are little hard red balls that don't have a heck of a lot of flavor. When it was decided that tomatoes are supposed to be about this big and red, a lot of the things that are in tomatoes, and I know I'm going to butcher this word, but carotenoids is one of the words, I think that's how you say it, that actually helps the tomato develop the sugars, was actually bred out of it. Okay, so a lot of those tomatoes that you see in the grocery store are never going to be as sweet and as flavorful and with the depth and richness of flavor that you're going to get from an heirloom tomato. Okay, what you are going to get is consistency, and that's what industrialized agriculture was looking for and monoculture was looking for. A lot of people debate about, well, what classifies as an heirloom tomato. Well, I can tell you that is not you're never going to find a very clear-cut answer on that in terms of its classification. Most people will agree that it's something that's at least 50 years old, and most people will agree that it's something, and one thing that it definitely has to be is it has to be open pollinated and breed true. So that leads to why I in particular enjoy heirloom variety vegetables, because breeding true means that I can seed save. Okay, that's important to me for many reasons. I like knowing that if something goes wrong and suddenly I don't get distribution of the seeds that I want, I can save from my own garden. So for instance, I've got 2 varieties of heirloom variety tomatoes here that I bought a couple years ago. This is a mix of 4 different ones, and this is one that is just one single type. Now I have those same tomatoes I saved, I have been saving and growing ones that I harvested from my own garden. Okay, and they're kept in these little envelopes, not these manufactured ones. And I can tell you, some of them are germinating today. There's no greater satisfaction in my mind when it comes to gardening of being able to take a wonderful plant that a wonderful fruit like a tomato that I've chosen from my garden, saving those seeds, putting them in packs, and then 8 months later seeing them germinating. That is a pretty awesome feeling, and that is one of the reasons why I like heirloom tomatoes. Now, even if you're not into saving seeds and growing them yourself, these heirloom tomatoes, they represent a great deal of genetic diversity. So genetic diversity has decreased incredibly since World War II. I read a statistic recently that said there's a 75% decrease in crop diversity since the 70s. That is crazy, right? So especially if we're dealing with global climate change and stuff, we have to have that diversity to protect our food stores. Okay, so that is one of the reasons why I love heirloom tomatoes. When it comes to what makes an heirloom tomato, we talked about the breeding true, open pollination, which means that it will naturally pollinate the baby plant, and the seeds that you take from it will actually create the same variety of tomato over and over again. And that leads us to hybrids. So hybrids, really, the hybrid revolution in food, it started in the late 40s, early 50s, but really boomed in the 70s. And that's when hybrids really started becoming available to the market garden, the home gardener as well. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with hybrids. Sometimes there's great varieties, really tasty tomatoes out there and other tasty veggies. But if you were to try to seed save from a hybrid variety, the odds are that the seeds will either be sterile or they may not breed true to what that parent plant is, and you're going to end up with something completely different. Okay, now these hybrids are chosen for their ability to be disease resistant, and they've been bred for those certain quantities, not necessarily flavor and not necessarily nutrition. Okay, so, but that being said, there are some great hybrids being developed, and feel free to give them a go. It's nice to, and it can be confusing because a lot of the seed companies sell both. One of my favorite seed companies, West Coast Seeds, it sells hybrids and heirloom and organic, right? So it can be it can be very confusing. But if you want to do seed saving, you maybe don't want to be choosing the hybrid varieties. And I see a lot of people asking about, are you sure that's non-GMO? When they're buying garden seeds for their own garden. The odds that a person like myself or yourself who's not growing on a commercial level would ever get their hands on GMO seeds is extremely, it's a fluke, because basically genetically modified seeds are sold only in large quantities to commercial growers from distributors who actually, you have to sign contracts and stuff because they're protected, they're patented seeds. You probably are not going to have to worry about getting GMO seeds for your own garden, and there really are very few crops that are currently being used in GMO: wheat, soy, corn. I know I've missed something, but very few in comparative to what's available out there. And then there's organic, okay? So a hybrid seed can be organic. Okay, an heirloom tomato can be organic, and they both can be non-organic. When you say organic, what that means is that it's being raised with organic practices without the use of specific chemicals and stuff, natural practices. But you can definitely grow an heirloom tomato with pesticides you see what I'm saying? So you might want to make sure that if you are purchasing heirloom tomatoes, say from a farmer's market, make sure, if that's important to you, don't assume that that heirloom tomato you're buying from the farmer's market is organic unless they tell you it is. It's kind of hard to get organic status, and so a lot of people who are growing heirloom varieties don't go through the cost and all of the red tape to get their organic status. So they'll probably, you'll often see at farmers market people not saying that the heirloom varieties are organic. They'll say heirloom varieties grown without pesticides or artificial fertilizers. Okay, and that's so that they don't get sued, because getting that status is hard. This has become a very political subject, and it's hard not to feel political about it. But I just want to say, I'm going to take a little bit of a stance that it's really important that we protect these heirloom tomatoes, because otherwise what we eat will be dictated by the large industrial conglomerates who are doing this monoculture. And there have been, in some jurisdictions, attempts to limit and make it illegal. Like in Colombia, for instance, laws have attempted to be passed to stop people from seed saving. Okay? So I don't know how that makes you feel. In my mind, I think of Darth Vader. Okay, I can't help it. I want to be able to grow my food the way I want to grow it, and I want to be able to protect that ability to do so. And that's one of the reasons why I am such an advocate for heirloom tomatoes and heirloom beans and heirloom squash. But I also, even if you don't care about that stuff, do try some of them, because honestly, what was sacrificed in order to create varieties that were easily to mass produce was a lot of flavor, okay, and a lot of fun. Like, I wish it was later in the season so I could show you some pictures of some of these beautiful freaks that I get out of my garden, and it's wonderful, and the flavor there can't be compared to. So I hope that was helpful. Okay, so I know that's a lot. I know I yattered and yattered and yattered, but I also know that a lot of you keep asking these same questions to me over and over again. I thought it was easier to deal with it this way. If this just makes you have more questions, don't hesitate to let me know in the comments. I will attempt to answer them to the best of my ability. And I really hope you take this chance to grow together today. Have a good one.